Making OpenSciEd accessible to all learners is exciting, but it can also feel overwhelming. You know your students have strengths and challenges, and you want them all to shine, but it's easy to wonder, do I need to make 20 versions of this task to meet 20 sets of needs? OpenSciEd is quality but dense, and it feels like it would take me hours to differentiate for all of my diverse learners. The truth is, students have so much genius to share, but sometimes the way that we ask them to show it doesn't quite fit. Differentiation doesn't have to mean creating 20 different tasks. It means thinking strategically about the supports that remove barriers without lowering the bar. So here's a strategy. Start by thinking about the most complex areas of support and what instructional strategies you could use to remove barriers and create access. And from there, you can create multiple, less scaffolded versions of the task so that you can meet all of your students where they are without taking away rich sense-making opportunities. So what might this look like in practice? Let me show you an example from the 6.1 Light and Matter unit. Imagine that you have this multilingual learner who loves to talk but finds organizing their thoughts into writing challenging. And you're coming up on lesson 7, which asks students to write an explanation of the one-way mirror phenomenon. Notice that the original task has the prompt and an open space. I know that the student that I have in mind would find it challenging to get their ideas down when presented with a prompt in this way. Therefore, I created a more scaffolded version that includes a word bank, visuals, translation, and sentence frames where they can just add a few keywords. An important aspect of this scaffolding is to remember that the core of the writing doesn't change. The student still has to demonstrate that they've figured out why does the student see themselves and not the teacher in the mirror. But what does change is how they get there. Once I have this highly scaffolded task, I can remove supports to create additional versions with my other learners in mind. For example, I made a copy without the visuals and translations for students who are further along in their English proficiency. And for students who need even less language support for writing, but they would still benefit from additional prompting to get all of their ideas down, I removed the word bank and the closed-ended sentence frames to create the least scaffolded version. So we started with the fully scaffolded version, then we removed supports to create differentiated copies of the same task, scaling back supports as needed. This way, the integrity of the sense-making stays intact, and students get exactly what they need to access the task and express their thinking. But there's something important to watch out for. Just because a student needs support in one area doesn't mean that they need it everywhere. You know that your students have a variety of assets, and we want them to shine. And we can do that by making sure we don't give scaffolds where they don't need it. For example, the same student I was discussing before, who needs supports in writing but really loves to talk, doesn't need as much scaffolding during discussions. So I let them go because requiring them to use sentence stems in that context would slow them down unnecessarily. One thing we have to keep asking ourselves is, what does this learner need to shine on this task? It's not a one-time decision. We're constantly adjusting based on both the learner and the demands of the task. If we don't, we risk over-scaffolding and actually getting in the way of the student showing what they really know and what they can do. So the next time you feel stuck trying to meet every need, pause and ask yourself, what are the demands of this task? What barriers might students face? And how can I build a continuum of support that helps students to really show their genius? This approach to differentiation can help you identify scaffolds that can serve all learners. It's what makes inclusive, meaningful sense-making possible.